Okay, so Exodus 18, verse 21, but select capable men from all people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain. Just a couple of chapters later, Exodus chapter 20, verse 16, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Somebody read to me Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 19 and 20.
16, 19, and 20?
Yep.
You shall not distort justice, you shall not be partial, and you shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise, and perverts the words of the righteous. Justice and only justice you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you.
Okay, do not accept a bribe. Follow justice and justice alone. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality. Somebody else read to me Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 15 and 16. Again, this is Moses' last sermon.
You shall have a full and just weight. You shall have a full and just measure, that your days may be prolonged in the land which your Lord God gives you. For everyone that does these things, everyone who acts unjustly, is an abomination to the Lord your God.
Okay, somebody tell me in modern terms, what is Moses conveying here when he talks about you must have accurate and honest weights and measures?
Just the way that the currency and everything, when don't add a pound here for your advantage or take a pound away.
Okay? So basically, as a business person, as a neighbor, as an employer, you are expected to live with some integrity and not have two sets of weights. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 11 says, do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. Now I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to start the class off by talking specifically about ethics in advertising. Then we'll transition over into news and information. But can we honestly say that advertising today is not a very deceptive process?
Oh, it is. Can we honestly say that?
Can we honestly say that?
No, not honestly say that advertising is not deceptive.
Okay.
Can't
Leviticus 19, verse 35, just a few verses later, do not use dishonest standards when measuring length, weight, or quantity. And finally, somebody read to me Psalm 15.
All of it?
Yep.
O Lord, who shall sojourn in your tent? Or who shall dwell in your holy hill? He who walks blamelessly and does what is right and speaks truth in his heart, who does not slander with his tongue, and who does no evil to his neighbor, nor takes up reproach against his friend, in whose eyes a veiled person is despised, but who honors those who fear the Lord, who swears to his own hurt, does not change, who does not put out his money at interest, and who does not take a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things shall never be moved.
Okay. Guys, if you haven't memorized Psalm 15, let me encourage you to at least give that some strong consideration. This is a psalm where the basic question is being asked, God, who can live on your holy hill? You know, what does it take ultimately to dwell in your sanctuary? Who is going to have that opportunity? And so he goes through and he answers the question. Somebody whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from his heart, has no slander on his tongue, who does his neighbor no wrong, casts no slur on his fellow man, who despises a vile man, honors those who fear the Lord, keeps his oath even when it hurts, lends his money without usury, does not accept a bribe against the innocent. These are the folks who are going to not be shaken. Now, as you look at that, again, I want this to kind of be the foundation for what we're laying today when we talk about ethics in media, ethics in advertising. Because I think we have drifted so far from this that it's pretty sad when you look around and you think about the fact that honesty, integrity, truth are pretty much foreign when it comes to what is coming across the airwaves today. Proverbs 11, verses 1 and 2. The Lord abhors dishonest scales, but accurate weights are his delight. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Okay. Having said that, let's take just a second, and let's go with Mr. Dustin. Dustin,
Yes.
in the last 24 hours, can you name me, say, 10 different forms of media, 10 different things, how the media has impacted you in the last 24 hours?
No.
So you've not seen any media in the last 24 hours?
No, I don't remember the last time I watched TV.
I'm not talking about just TV, brother.
I'm listening to my iPod, and I've been in the library. Now, I did go on the computer and find a false advertisement for this class, but
Okay.
that was something I was
So
looking for in particular.
You've been on the computer.
So, the computer.
What about signs, billboards on the way to school?
Yeah, I don't think there are any.
It's so difficult.
I'm sorry.
Dude, you live in a box.
No, but I don't. Sorry. Anyway, but yeah, I don't think. I seen a bumper sticker on a person's car, that one of those coexist bumper stickers.
Listen to the radio.
All right. Let's move to a more normal person for a moment. Mr. Blocker, what kind of stuff have you seen the last 24 hours?
You said more normal?
You want to talk like that?
Mine?
What do you say?
I saw some program on the History Channel last night about the origin
Okay.
of Crips.
I'll watch that. I didn't watch that one, but I saw.
Now, hey Chris,
Yes, sir.
do you use TiVo?
Do I use TiVo? No, I don't.
So you were then subjected to the commercials as well.
Yes, I saw the commercials.
Okay. Did the TV show itself have product placement in it?
No, not that program. Well, I
Okay.
guess, blue bandanas, but that was about it.
All right.
It was
What
more,
else?
It was history. It was more of the documentary kind of variety. And then the internet. I saw, check my email, Facebook.
Okay.
By that. But
Does Facebook have ads on it?
not
The
mine.
answer is yes.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
I got rid of mine.
Okay. What about radio? Those of you who listen to radio this morning, did you get any ads on radio?
Yep.
Absolutely. Keep going, Chris.
I listened to the radio this morning, heard some ads. There are even ads. When I was doing some studying yesterday, there's the Comcast has those music channels,
Right.
and they even run ads on that as well. While the music is playing, in the visual ads, they kind of pop up. There's advertising.
How much media saturation do you guys think the average teenager gets in a day?
Oh,
a
tons.
lot.
Yeah.
Well, then I went out to eat last night. There were ads in the restaurant.
Okay. Do you know that many of the school systems paid for televisions to go into the school as long as they can play a 10-minute spot every single day?
Yep. No one.
So basically, we'll give your TVs as long as you let us do this 10-minute blurb. Now, that may not sound like a big deal to you, but guys, think about it from a financial perspective. They're not willing to take that kind of a financial hit unless they know it's going to pay off in the long run. What are some other ways that young and old are saturated with media?
Newspapers, magazines.
Okay? What about mobile signs? Do we see any of that kind of thing today?
Mobile signs?
Truck traffic.
Mobile signs.
I saw
Oh, yeah.
2 yesterday.
Buses, taxi
Is
cabs.
sign driving around?
Yeah, it's like a truck with a huge sign on it.
Well, bus stops. There's all over bus stops and bus shelters.
Yeah.
And especially
Okay.
in South Carolina, they fly them around all the time, like over the beach and stuff.
Billboards.
I've seen that.
So we left off on Tuesday we had just started defining two things. The difference between false advertising and deceptive advertising. False advertising would be where we're passing off goods or services as something that they're not, where basically you've just got blatant lies, deliberately untrue statements. These are used to prevent the buyer from acting reasonably, whereas deceptive advertising is going to be misleading. It's going to be something then where they purposefully are trying to get you to jump on their product, but either not giving you all the details or leaving some pretty major things out. We left off with this ad. Camel cigarettes. Obviously, that young lady is not realistically selling cigarettes. It is a very sexual image. Implies that Camel cigarette is the key to develop an intimate relationship with basically ladies. You look at, for instance, Virginia Slims, their motto, "You've come a long way, baby." What do you think they mean by that?
Women's lib.
Women's lib. Look at this ad. This is a full-page magazine ad. What is up at the top?
Old clothesline.
Old bat hanging clothes.
It's got an old lady holding clothes. There's a clothesline out there. Then underneath you've got this lady who is in this dress, supposed to be fashionable. What are they really trying to communicate with this ad?
You're no longer the homemaker.
Well, and the woman on the bottom, obviously, she looks more attractive. She's full of color. She's, a little shoulder action there.
The cigarette will change who she actually is.
Right, the cigarette is the key to changing your life, basically.
Well,
That this particular cigarette is going to help you, transform you. Yeah.
the whole name Virginia Slims, that slim part of it,
Yep.
goes back to the early days of cigarette advertising when they were trying to find a way to appeal to women, and they knew that women have this thing about their weight, so they came up with the name Virginia Slims, and they started making the cigarettes smaller to try to appeal to women and convince them that they smoke these cigarettes, it'll help them to control their weight.
Absolutely. Here's another. While we're on cigarettes, on the right you see an ad, a fairly recent ad. You got a girl who's got this look, kind of like an attitude. The ad says, "Yeah, I got a tattoo, and no, you can't see it." What would you say is the target audience age for this ad?
17, yeah, 15 to 17.
Okay, so we're talking young adults. You got this woman who is standing up for herself. Basically, the message to teenage girls is that smoking is a gutsy act of establishing independence.
Gotta be 18 to buy them, though, right?
Here's a question. Everybody in there just said this ad is targeting young people. What's the legal age to buy tobacco?
18.
18.
21 in some places.
Now think about that for just a moment. The legal age to purchase this product in most states is 18. Some states it is 21. But you got an ad that you guys yourselves said was probably targeting 16, 17-year-olds. So how in the world can we say that it is ethical for somebody to show an ad that is purposefully going after a target audience it shouldn't be going after? We already talked a little bit, and I'm not going to stay on this picture long.
What?
I've obviously blacked out part of it. The guy does have on underwear, but it's a pretty hideous picture. What do you think this ad is selling?
Sex.
Jeans.
Not jeans.
Shoes. Sex.
Bubblegum.
Sex.
Obviously, we'd say sex, but guys, it's selling a vacuum cleaner.
Oh, yeah, that's a vacuum cleaner.
Where's the vacuum cleaner?
She's got her heel on it.
Oh my.
Hold right there.
It's on the, what she's sending.
I don't sleep.
Now, in all seriousness, guys, I realize that's a pretty hideous example, but think about that for just a minute. This is a vacuum cleaner. How many people do what is going on in that scene with a vacuum cleaner. That's so beyond realistic. This one cracked me up because this one is selling toilet paper.
What?
Now, what in the world is sexy about toilet paper?
Double ply.
Throwing this one in here, guys. And again, you know, these people are at least somewhat clothed. Obviously not modestly clothed, but they do have on clothing. But here's the point. Guys, when you think about what you're actually doing with toilet paper, that is almost as far from sexy as you can get. Let's be honest. That's hygienically cleaning yourself, and yet they're using a very seductive image to try to sell their toilet paper.
Because that grabs people's eye.
It grabs their eye. Obviously, it grabs their wallet.
Is that from
Because-
like another country?
I've never heard of that brand.
I'll be honest, I don't know.
Because I noticed when I was looking for for those videos that the more you got out of the United States, the more like
Risque they get.
Yeah.
This is a Volvo ad, which really hurts my feelings because I used to have a Volvo. The tagline says, "We are just as excited as you."
Oh no.
That's ridiculous.
It is exceptionally ridiculous.
That's redonkulous.
How about this one? How many of you guys have seen the Blockbuster, the end of late fees things in their windows?
Yeah.
Probably most of you. Here's the catch, guys. They've got these big old signs that say the end of late fees. They're trying to compete with Netflix and some of these other video outlets, the Red Box and stuff. But the small print says, after 8 days, if you don't turn the thing in, you're charged the full price of the movie on your credit card. If you do return it within 30 days, then you're reimbursed, but you're still charged a restocking fee. After 30 days, you can't return it. So is it really the end of late fees or not? No. I mean, basically, after 8 days, they're going to slap you with a $30 fee that allows them to repurchase another movie. How do you combat something like this?
You go to the Red Box.
Go to somewhere else.
Got it?
Boycott.
Okay? You boycott it, you'd go somewhere else. Why? What does that do?
Takes some money out of their pockets. Keeps
Shows
them
you don't
from
support them.
It keeps them from charging your credit card after 8 days.
Okay. Ultimately, what are they wanting? I mean, what's the bottom line?
Money.
They're wanting your business. If they realize that their little game is not going to work, then they're going to have to go to plan B. Here's another one. This is a, and you guys have seen lots of these kinds of things. This one's called a head-on.
Yeah.
To provide immediate relief of headaches. Notice this. No study showing any of the ingredients actually alleviate headache pain. And yet they've sold roughly $40 million in this product.
Because most people have a headache after watching those ads.
Give me an example of something like this that would fall under this category.
The cold preventive medicine. Well, I forget what I Airborne?
Airborne, yeah.
Diet.
Airborne, supposedly derived by a school teacher. They have made mega millions, hundreds of millions of dollars with that product. But there again, do they know for sure that the thing even really works? What else? What's another one? Diet pills. You don't think there's any money in diet pills, do you? Oh, man.
Brad, do you have your email up? I just emailed you the one that I found, and that's the same thing.
Okay. I'll pull it up in just a second. Here's one that KJ sent me earlier. Subliminal advertising. This is from KFC, one of their little chicken sandwiches. Notice what they tag into the lettuce.
Dollar bill.
Oh,
Money.
I was like, what?
What?
Wow.
And again, guys, these are little things, but obviously they're working. In fact, let me pause this for a second. Do you know that the best advertising in the world is not necessarily the shock advertising? The best advertising in the world is the advertising that you look at and you think realistically it's not getting to you, that you're not buying it. Because basically what they want to do is they want to plant a seed in your mind that you don't even know you've got planted there. But when you go to make your purchasing choice, that seed is going to drive your decision. And so the best advertising, the most effective, is advertising where they can communicate something to you and you not even realize that you picked up on something.
Right.
Now, obviously, some of these others that we're showing are kind of the shock and all, the Howard Stern kind of advertising. Yeah, that's going to catch a lot of people's attention. But ultimately, the ones that you got to be careful of are the ones where when a Christian says, well, you know, those ads don't even affect me. Folks, I promise you they wouldn't spend millions of dollars taking airtime out, paying an advertising company, and producing something if it didn't affect us in some way. What else? Thoughts? Comments? Let's look at another one. How about this one? How many of you guys ever seen something for rebates? They basically say, hey, free after rebate. And yet when you start sorting through and you actually read the bottom line, you find out there's so many hoops you got to jump through. Either, number one, you basically aren't going to get your money back, or number two, it's going to end up costing you something just to try to get your money. And so most people just scrap it. They don't send in anything, which is what they want you to do in the first place. They want you to buy the product thinking you're going to get it either free or cheap. You get home, you realize, oh, I got to have this extra receipt, or I've got to have proof of purchase, or I got to cut off the UPC, and then I've got to mail this and make duplicates and blah, blah. And by the time you look at it, you're like, you know what, that ain't worth it. Which is the whole purpose of what they were going to do in the first place. But they got you with the whole free thing. What about this one? Who is the character there?
Joe Camel.
Joe Camel. You realize back in the late 90s, 96, 97, more kids could pick out Joe Camel than they could many of the cartoon characters? Now, do you think that is in any way reminiscent of what the actual manufacturers were wanting to do?
Yep.
I mean, when you look at that ad is basically cartoonish in nature on purpose. They're coming at younger people, younger generation. That's not, let's be honest, a 70-year-old man looking at that ad is not going to be turned on by Joe Camel. So, ethically speaking, what should some guidelines be when we talk about specifically media and children?
What should the line be?
Yeah.
I think also, like we looked at earlier with the cigarettes, where they were targeting illegal age groups, I think that's one thing, is make sure that people you're targeting are of legal age to purchase that product.
Okay. First and foremost, we got to have ads that actually obey the law. There's one. What else? But remember, guys, as we're talking about this, their first and hardest comeback is always going to be freedom of speech or freedom of the press. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in just a minute, about how basically they feel like they should be able to get around that. But number one point, if you're selling a product that's illegal for minors, you should not be able to be allowed to advertise for minors. What about this cross deal where you've got, for instance, we talked a little bit about this, you've got a show like Dora the Explorer, your kid is watching a 30-minute television show, and then they have Dora the Explorer commercials that are selling a product. Do you think a 3-year-old child knows the difference between Dora the television show and Dora wanting you to buy this box of cereal?
Nope.
No. They can't make that transition. And so what they see basically is this one long running thing. Dean.
What is wrong with someone having Dora sell Cheerios?
How they're doing it.
Yeah, it depends. Do you feel like they're doing it ethically and upstanding? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with Dora selling Cheerios or whatever, but it's how she's doing it. Is she doing it on an ethical, upstanding basis, or are they manipulating their audience? Can you manipulate your audience?
Sure, to a certain extent, it's all manipulated. It's all manipulative.
Okay, why would you say that?
Well, because the adult is well aware when he hires Nickelodeon and asks to use Dora the Explorer in a particular ad campaign, they know that the children who that cartoon character is geared to can't delineate the difference. So there is a certain amount of manipulation because they want that child to see Dora the Explorer. They want that child to go to the parent and say, "Mommy, I want Cheerios because Dora the Explorer's on Cheerios," and they want the parents to not be able to resist their cute little child. So there's certainly is a certain degree of manipulation involved in that.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily unethical. When we go out and try to teach the gospel to people, there's a certain degree of manipulation that goes on with that as well.
Right, and we're going to talk about that. How much can we get away with? Go ahead, Chris. Talk about that for just a minute. Let's say you're at somebody's door.
Okay.
You're door knocking.
I have to be ethical. I have to be ethical in the way that I present the gospel. But that doesn't mean that I try to package it as that I don't try to package it well. That doesn't mean that I try to present it as boring. I want to cast it in the best light, but I cannot be dishonest as I'm doing it.
Are we guilty though too of trying sometimes to use a back door?
Sure we are.
And by that I mean, instead of going up to the front door, knocking and saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about the gospel," we go up and we say, "Hey, do you have time to answer these 3 open questions, these 3 open-ended questions? Or can I leave this with you and come back and maybe talk with you about it later?"
Okay, but wait a minute.
When realistically, realistically, the reason why we are there is to try to convert that person.
Right. But there's a difference between the two examples that you just brought up.
Okay.
Say, can I leave this with you and come back and talk to you about these things later? Versus, doing something. I mean, all you're doing, you're leaving some information at the door and saying, "Hey, could you take a look at this, and I'm gonna come back and we'll talk about this later."
Yeah.
That's different than, for example, the survey approach. There's different survey approach. We're just going around trying to get people's opinions about things in our neighborhood, versus going up and asking them a question directly, saying, "How do you belong to a church, and how do you feel generally about church?" If you just go up and ask them that directly and use that as an icebreaker, there's a difference between that approach and going up to them and saying, we're just taking an informal survey or a formal survey of people in the neighborhood, and we just like to get your opinion. You see what I'm saying? There's a different sort of manipulation that goes on there. One of them, I think, is a bit less honest than the other.
Well, and I'll tell you guys, when I go out and speak on the weekends, if a congregation has advertised it as a seminar weekend, I very, very rarely will allow them to bait and switch the community. Because to me, if you've said this is going to be a seminar, that pretty much by definition means we're not going to ask an invitation on Friday and Saturday night. This is more of a come, learn, lecture series rather than a gospel meeting. And I think it's almost dishonest to say, "Hey, come to this seminar," and then at the end, basically offer the invitation hoping you're going to get people down the aisle. Now, obviously, I offer an invitation on Sunday, but on Friday and Saturday, if it's been published or promoted as more of a seminar lecture kind of series, I'm very reluctant to do that. James, you had a comment.
No, I was just going to ask you the question that y'all started getting into, and that is if there's a difference between appealing to an audience and manipulating that audience. You know,
Absolutely.
Because we appeal to children. The Ohio magazine looks different than Think magazine, or our Sunday school curriculum looks different for children than it does for adults. So I just, I don't think it's wrong to appeal to people. And I just wanted to see what you thought that line was, or where that line existed.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, is there a problem with appealing to kids? If I've got 4 children. My kids don't immediately pick up a Greek book and start looking at it for fun and pleasure. For fun and pleasure, they want to see something that's got cool pictures or something on it. And I think as producers, as publishers, as whatever, we recognize that. The question is, do you take that to the extreme to try to get your way? And are you using that in an ethical manner? Let's look at a couple more examples before we jump completely off. How about this one? Introductory offers. This is from Bank of America. Notice what it says. No annual fee, a 0% introductory APR on balance transfers, cash advance checks for your first 12 billing cycles, and you receive a $50 statement credit after qualifying transactions. Sounds great. Sounds like something everybody would want to jump onto because basically, they're paying you to sign up for this card. What they don't tell you are all the little fees and all the little things how they're going to hit you when you start using that thing. So you got 3% of your cash advance is going to hit you up. Anytime you're late, they're going to hit you up. Anytime you're over the credit limit, they're going to hit you up. So for them to say there's no annual fees, this is all a good free deal, in a way is somewhat misleading. The other side of it is, how long does this last?
It says first 12 billing cycles.
12 billing cycles. So roughly you've got a year, and then what are they going to do to you?
Shoot everything up.
What is the legal limit on credit cards today that they can raise it to?
Isn't it 22?
There is no legal limit, guys. They can pretty much raise it to anything they want to. Most credit cards right now are pushing into the 30s because of the new deal that Congress passed. That is the credit card company's way of basically trying to cover themselves. They used to get people by having moving days when your bill was due, and so they would catch people because basically they would do it on a 4-week cycle instead of saying your bill is due the 15th of every month. They would say it's 15th this month, it's the 13th next month, it's the 12th the month after, and suddenly people would find themselves being a day or two late, and they'd hit them with these late payment fees. Well, the government came in and said that's unethical. You need to establish a date, keep that date. But the government did not say there should be a cap on how much interest you can charge. Let's look for just a second at Luke chapter 19. Let's read the account of Zacchaeus. I want us to pull what he was doing, what was his occupation, and then what did he tell Christ that he would do. Somebody go ahead and read that if you've got it.
He entered Jericho and was passing through, and there was a man called by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. Zacchaeus was trying to see who Jesus was, and was unable because of the crowd, for he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree in order to see him, for he was about to pass through that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for today I must stay at your house. And he hurried and came down and received him gladly. When they saw it, they all began to grumble, saying, He has gone to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will give back 4 times as much. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost.
Okay, so we got a guy who looks like probably practiced some dishonesty. How does he aim to fix his unethical practices?
Give back 4 times as much if he defrauded anybody.
He's going to give back 4 times as much. So, to me, in this New Testament example, we've got a clear example of, number one, there was some unethical things going on in business back then, but number two, we kind of got a picture of what would be a reasonable solution for a company or person who participates in such activities. Basically, you've got a guy who says, I'm going to pay you fourfold. So we look at examples kind of like what we've been looking at. Things like, for instance, this is a diet pill. Somebody mentioned these earlier. The one thing that I would point out on this particular example, if you look in blue text at the middle of the packaging, it says FDA approved non-prescription weight loss aid. Now that sounds great. That sounds like, hey, I can jump on this and start popping these pills. The thing they don't tell you, though, is that no drug can be sold in the United States unless it's been approved by the FDA. So anytime you pick up a pill, it's got to be approved by the FDA. Now, obviously, that is discounting vitamins and homeopathic substances, but any kind of medicinal pill that actually has a specific use has to be approved by the FDA. What are they trying to get their buyers to believe here?
There's something special.
Yeah, they're the only ones out there that have it.
It's authorized.
Absolutely. It's authorized, it's something special. And what are they casting on other weight loss aids?
They're fake and not authorized.
Right. Basically trying to say, we're the real deal, those are just kind of hokey medicine. When that's garbage. The reality of it is they're FDA approved because they have to be FDA approved. How about this one? This is an unfinished claim. CNN, they have a tagline that says, be the first to know. And the question is, all right, to know what exactly? To know the truth, to know what you want us to know that night's headline. See how basically in this example, that can mean a whole bunch of different things. And they leave it out there, never really, because if they were to say, be the first to know the news, and somebody beats them to that, they would have to get rid of their slogan. Let's say that there is a school shooting, and Fox News picks it up first. Well, if CNN's tagline was be the first to know all news, and Fox scooped them on it, they couldn't legally, technically, they couldn't use their slogan anymore. Because you would not have gone to CNN, they would not have been the first to know. So they leave it open to where basically they can make any kind of claim they want to about it. Here's a uniqueness claim. These claims advertise the difference of product amongst others, but doesn't necessarily mean that this product is better than the rest. How about this one? You got a company, Evansville, it's a beer company. Notice what they say in the fine print. Rheingold, the natural beer made from grains and water. Well, guys, I'm not a beer drinker, and I certainly don't ever want you guys to jump into that, but I am smart enough to know that all beers are made from those ingredients. It's not exactly earth-shattering news. Here's one that is Tropicana, calcium plus vitamin D. This one is close to just being a factual statement, but it claims things that competing claims do not make in order to make this product appear better. Tropicana has orange juices that now have extra calcium. Well, do we really need more calcium than is already provided in the orange juice? When you think about it for just a moment, it says 100% pure orange juice with calcium and vitamin D. Were we already getting enough with just the orange juice? Because if so, then basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to sell their product by adding something even though you either don't need it or you're already getting enough of it. It's kind of that, hey, we're healthier claim, even though the other competitors have got plenty of calcium or vitamin D. How about this one? Vague claims. You got a razor, their slogan says the best man can get. How do you prove that?
You can't.
You can't prove it. And so Gillette gets away with it because there's no way of basically disproving that this is the best a man can get. Vague claims will be something that are unclear, that are not able to be verified. Question, are these ethical? Why would this be an example of unethical?
Possibly because there's no evidence for it. They don't. One way or the other, like you just said.
Yeah, but if you work at Gillette, you think your product is really good, you think, hey, this is the best.
You better be able to back it up. You're going to make that claim.
How would you back it up?
Well, focus groups, studies, opinion polls.
Actually conducting the research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which would cost them money.
Gillette, our employees think our product's great.
It would cost them money, and it might actually result in the fact that they're not the best.
Well, because I guarantee you they're doing that research anyway.
Oh, absolutely. The next one is a testimonial claim. I'll go ahead and thank John Warrens for allowing me to use his picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the good old days.
Those Air Force black and white.
You got a lot of companies who are trying to use famous people to advertise their product, hoping to get consumers to buy a product simply based on them. Give me a modern example of a person who is tied with a particular product.
YouTube artists like mine.
What's that facial scrub stuff? Proactive?
Proactive, yeah.
Yeah?
Commercial.
Michael Jordan and Haynes.
Michael Jordan and Haynes.
Old Spice.
Who's the guy?
The grandpa?
The Old Spice, the guy that says you could have the diamonds, you could have the...
What's his name?
I'm sorry, man. That one ain't ringing a bell. I can go along with Jessica Simpson with Proactive.
False advertising.
I can go along with the who are some other well-known? Michael Jordan with Haynes.
The Allstate black guy.
The president from 24.
I have Allstate. There's a bunch of like that.
The president from 24.
That's the guy that did Allstate.
What's his name?
Be prepared.
Are you in good hands?
Okay, guys, let me ask this. What about like Jared from Subway?
Okay, it's different
That's
though.
what I mean. That's what I mean.
Because they can verify that you know,
But he wasn't famous before Subway.
that he used to be a lot bigger.
Okay, what about sports stars?
Yeah.
You got Chunky Soup by football players.
Yeah, and look at Wheaties. All the sports players they put on the Wheaties boxes. That's why I buy Wheaties, because I want to be like them.
Are those claims, is that ethical or unethical?
I don't think it's unethical. They're basically paying them to say that their product is great.
Like if you wear Nike, you'll play like Tiger Woods.
So if money changes hands, that raises the ethical bar. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, just, it depends on if it actually works. If it doesn't actually work for us, then it's nothing. I mean, that's what it comes down to. They're saying
Because guys, listen to what you're saying for just a second. Think about this. There's a campaign going on right now with milk. It's the Got Milk campaign where the people, and they've got actors and actresses lined up that want to do that particular campaign, not because of a monetary payoff, but because of the face time that those actors and actresses get in those ads. So, again, I don't think we can say ethically that it's strictly about the dollar bills, although that face time may mean more dollar bills to them later on. You got to ask the question, is that something that that person really believes in, or are they just selling themselves? Are they selling basically their soul for whether it be money, whether it be ad time? Another one, questionable statistics. Notice this. You go to Centrum's website, it says higher levels of vitamin B6 and B12 to support health. And yet you go to the bottom of their webpage and it says these statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. They put that statement at the bottom because they know most people are not going to scroll all the way down. They're hoping they've already got you hooked much earlier on. Again, is that ethical or unethical? I think, realistically, we got to look at some of these things and ask ourselves, why are they doing this? Why are they burying stuff? Why are they hiding stuff? Let me give you an example of what I would consider smarter consumer claims. Jif peanut butter has got a great slogan. Choosy moms choose Jif. Why is that a good slogan?
Because it's not false. They could.
Okay.
You can verify it. It's not.
What are they relying on though right there?
Choosy moms.
The moms to.
Dude, you got, y'all have disengaged your heads today. They are wanting moms to think about their children and be a choosy mom. They're wanting, basically they're playing on the kids. They're saying, if you love your kids a bunch, you're going to use this product. Same thing with Goodyear. Goodyear, they've got the slogan, the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them. It's a great advertising slogan. Here's some key concepts that I want you guys to be aware of, be thinking about as we look at some of this stuff. What is deceptive advertising? What is the children's ability to distinguish programs and ads? How could we improve children's advertising? I mean, would it be fair as a body of, let's say, the government or the media board, would it be fair to say if you advertise a children's product, you have to run a banner across the top or the bottom that says this is an ad? What about negligent consumer behavior, product misuse, drivers of compulsive consumption? Give me an idea or an example of how the television is used for compulsive buying.
Buy now, in the next 12 seconds, 22 seconds, we could have that coming up.
And you'll receive this free too.
If you are one of the first 200 to call, we're going to double your offer. What about corporate rumors? The last one you see on the screen there.
What does that mean?
How can that be ethical or unethical?
Well, you're going to, like that GM issue you talked about on Tuesday, that would obviously keep people from buying the product.
Okay. Are there any corporate issues going on right now? Toyota. Okay. Let's talk about that for just a second. Somebody tell me what's going on with Toyota.
They had to recall like millions of vehicles because of their brakes.
The computer.
Okay.
Yeah, the chip.
And the floor mats.
All right? So we've got a car that may have some kind of a malfunction. Now, let's think about this full circle for just a minute. Who benefits from Toyota's problem?
Everybody else. All the other car makers.
Okay, all the other car makers. Who currently owns one of the car makers?
United States government.
United States government. Do you think it's in the United States government's best interest to hype the Toyota problem and spotlight their own product?
For sure.
Absolutely. And so now what we find is we're running kind of this unethical dilemma of, okay, are we just hyping Toyota to sell GMs, or is it really that big of a problem? How many people have actually been killed? I mean, you guys surely are old enough to remember when the Firestone tire thing blew up. To me, that was a much bigger deal because a lot more vehicles were involved. This one, though, seems to be getting blown out of proportion. It's on the news a lot. They've got Toyota basically doing as much spin control as they can, and you wonder how much of that is because for many, many years, Toyota was a solid company, and they were taking business away from American car manufacturers. And now, all of a sudden, it's kind of like, hey, we got a weapon we can beat them across the head on. And that's part of what we're talking about with this whole ethics thing.
Hey, Brad.
Why do we worry about ethics in advertising? Number one, not to hurt sentiments of society, to maintain a code of conduct, to avoid misrepresentation, to adhere with social norms, for social acceptance. Okay, so we've got a clear, distinct issue, and that is, how do we ethically sell a product, make the money, and yet present an accurate portrayal of that product? Because every single one of you in that room has looked at some kind of a fast food commercial, whether it be a Big Mac or quarter pounder or whatever, and you look at it on screen and you're thinking, man, that looks great. And you end up going and buying one, and what does it look like in real life?
Nasty.
Still looks different.
Looks pretty nasty. Looks smaller. It doesn't look as appealing. It was thrown together by some 16-year-old who gets paid minimum wage and doesn't care what it looks like.
Just picked his nose.
Probably sweat. The spokesman that knows Joe Camel.
Advertising is one side of the coin. How about this side of the coin? Freedom of the press. And now we think a little bit about, okay, you got ethics in advertising and marketing, but you've also got ethics in telling the news. When you look at freedom of the press across the world, on the screen you see a map. And basically, the bluer you are, the more freedom you've got. The redder you are, the less freedom you've got. Obviously, the United States of America is fairly free when it comes to press. There are some things we cannot get away with, but for the most part, we have a pretty free press. How does that change society?
The most freedom? Of press.
I mean, for instance, take China for just a minute. Their citizens, what do they get told?
What the government wants them to hear.
What the government wants them to hear. What are the pluses of that and what are the minuses of that?
Well, you told us about the Google.
Right?
So that would be, I think, a plus.
That is a big plus to me. Their government has said we don't want our citizens sitting at a computer watching a bunch of porn. So they're trying to put filters on Google. That's a good thing. But in the same aspect, how could it be bad?
Depending on who's in charge at the time.
And besides that, it's not the secular government's job to save people's souls. That's our job.
Okay?
And we start to become complacent and lazy, and I think that's an awful lot of the reason why the church is on the decline and has been on the decline in the United States, because we relegated our role to the secular government. We think that if we're good, good members of one party or another, and we vote a certain way, well, then we'll be a more moral society, and we...
Which is garbage.
What's that?
which is total garbage, by the way.
Yes, it is. Not everything the church is going down.
All right, let's do a little example here for just a minute. James Coker,
Yeah.
you are a journalist in Europe, and there is a major news story about a group of young people who've killed some folks and have basically slaughtered their parents for money. In that country, by law, you are not supposed to identify children before the age of 18 by name. So you are bound by law that says you can't do this. But you know that this particular story has got out on the wire and is being picked up by American journalists who are not bound by this law. Do you go ahead and publish their names, trying to get the scoop, trying to get the ratings, or do you allow the American journalists to do that?
I would just adhere to the government, and I wouldn't print or try to put anything out dishonest. But if I don't have to disclose the names, I can still do the story and put the emphasis on just how wicked of an act that was.
Okay. What about a government like a China or an India where they basically are not allowing folks to report on, let's say, women being beaten down?
Yeah.
Or maybe some kind of an atrocity towards females. You live in that country, you reported legally in that country for many, many years what they wanted you to report, and now you move to one of these countries that has a more freedom of the press. Do you go back and actually report some of the stuff that you saw?
I'd report as much of the truth as they'd let me.
Well, you've left China and you're now in Australia.
Oh, I see. Well, then I'm under a new set of laws. I would report it.
Okay.
I don't know how.
What else? What else, guys? How would you deal with that?
Well, if it was something that you were obligated before God, whether or not the government says to not do it, you're supposed to do it.
Okay.
And you deal with the consequences, because that's essentially what the apostles did. They told them to not preach the truth.
So if we're dealing in human rights issues, or if we're dealing in someone's physical survival issues, then you think that trumps the government?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Biblically, it does.
Yeah.
Romans 13.
God never told journalists how to do their jobs. He told Christians how to be Christians.
Right.
So, we have to tell the truth. But, I don't know.
Okay, and James, that brings up what else I was wanting to ask you about. Are you really, truly telling the truth if you don't report all of the truth?
I think so.
You think so?
It depends on the story, obviously. I think you could hit the main points without getting too specific. If that particular government won't allow that, you could still get...
Okay, so if I get up in a pulpit and I tell people that all you got to do is hear and believe, then they're good because I've told them the truth.
Well, no, I don't think that...
Brad, if I ask you who you are, do you have to tell me what your social security number is?
Absolutely not.
There you go.
There I go, what?
Well, you tell me your name, but you don't have to give me your life history. You certainly don't have to give me your social security number.
If that were the case, Brad, I'd have to preach out every word out of the Bible every time I preach. And I don't...
No, but I guess let's get back to women for just a minute. You got a situation where women are being oppressed. You are living in an environment where they will not allow you to write that up. If you don't tell the truth,
right,
are you violating a biblical law versus a governmental law?
I mean, if you lie?
I think you have to move out of that environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because obviously that the government doesn't want to do anything about it. So even if you do report it, it's going to be like, so what?
I think you become the Dalai
Well,
Lama.
the Roman government said not to confess Christ. They said confess Caesar.
Right, but that's a direct affront to what we're told to do as Christians, what we have to do as Christians. Matthew 28:19, clearly we have a responsibility, and if the secular government tells us to do something that would cause us to defy the will of God, we have a responsibility to obey God rather than men.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing from you guys is, if a secular government says you are not allowed to tell the truth, then you guys are saying we would need to pull out of there.
Yeah, you gotta get away from that.
Right.
You'd have to move to either a neighboring nation or even move to Australia and become a citizen of Australia and then report about what happened.
Okay, but let me go back and say this. Have you done the people in that country a disservice by leaving?
Not if that means the truth being reported. I mean, what would be a bigger disservice, to leave and tell the truth, or to stay and not say anything at all?
Okay.
Or if you do stay there and tell the truth, and it's like most journalism today, it's all pre-recorded. So they're siphoning that through a filter. So
right.
Even if you do report it, it won't matter.
Right. Now that's the Chuck's bringing up the other point. It may be that you report the truth. You may actually have an accurate news account, but when that actually comes through the station, wherever you're at, the editor at that station doesn't like your angle, or they don't want that particular story presented that way, they can cut and paste and splice. They can say that, time constraints, whatever, and so your truth may totally be getting kicked out. Dustin, you had a comment?
Yeah, and I think it's also important to realize why they're telling you can't do that. I know, like, when they're looking for certain criminals, they don't want the media to go out and report on it, because that might give them a tip. So I think it's all, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that, yeah, if it's an unethical issue, then yeah, we need to 100% be ethical. But if they're doing it for a cause, for the greater good of not only men, but to catch the guy.
Well, and we're going to talk about that towards the end of the class, and, Dean can weigh in some on this. What about a news guy who follows a military convoy, and he's reporting their position?
And he's what?
And he's reporting their position on camera. Well, we're 20 clicks outside of Baghdad on the east side. Well, you just told the enemy where this convoy is.
You shoot him in the kneecaps till he goes back home.
All right, let's look at a couple of things. One of the things that I want you to understand is this whole area that we're discussing right now has changed dramatically just in the last 15 years, and part of that is the instantaneous way in which we get news today.
Hey, Brad.
As such, being in the information age, we've got to start thinking about things like invasion of privacy. You've got major digital manipulation, which you can look at that as somebody cutting and pasting and pulling out and reposting it on a different internet site, or tweaking it, or retouching pictures, or photoshopping pictures. You've got the immediacy issue, which is causing lots and lots of issues in journalism, where previously journalists would take their time, they would get the story right, they'd get the facts right. Well, now there's this urgency to be the first to get it out there, and in some cases, their rush to get it out there means they've got the wrong information. You've got unfiltered information. People literally off the street giving information that may or may not be true. Plagiarism. How can each one of these areas present an ethical dilemma? Start with privacy. How can that be an ethical problem?
Well, it's in our politics today.
Stealing.
let's take a current news story. Tiger Woods. How much privacy should a citizen like Tiger Woods receive as he is undergoing some of the stuff he's undergoing right now versus what the news media would like us to believe is our need to know?
Just as much privacy if anybody in here were in that situation.
Okay, but that's not what we see. Dean, I could be wrong, but I don't think the paparazzi's waiting by your car. I really am not sure that that's the case, but I don't think they are.
No, I'm not saying that's what he's getting. I'm saying that he should being the operative word. He should have as much privacy if anybody else in this room were in that situation. But
what do you say to the person who says he has put himself in the public limelight?
Okay.
He's making money by endorsing things and selling to the public. Does that raise the level of privacy or non-privacy that a person gets?
I don't think so. I don't think it should. I mean, it does, but I don't think it should.
Okay. John Warrens, on the second point, digital manipulation, do you think it is acceptable for magazine covers to retouch photos and not mention that?
It's entirely wrong for them to do that. As far as women's magazines and such that are promoting a better self and such, I mean, you got our little daughters out there that are looking at this like they did 20, 30 years ago with Barbie dolls, that, this is the perfect figure and this is what I need to look like, but they're all digitized, they're all blown up, plastic, whatever, and it's completely wrong. And so our duty is to go through the checkout lines and reverse those magazines so that nobody can see them.
I tell you, one of the things I do, guys, in all seriousness, we've got a brand of stores here in Tennessee that actually put plastic placards over what I would consider to be indecent magazines.
Yeah.
And I shop there, even though their prices are a little bit higher, I shop there more regularly, and that's part of the reason. Because when I go through there with my kids, I don't have to worry about my 10-year-old son Googling, looking at these magazines like Cosmo or Us or People or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, even Oprah Winfrey is digitized, I'm sure. But
no, surely not.
Now the camera takes off 10 pounds.
KJ Nelson, what about the topic of immediacy? How do you address getting something out quickly versus getting something out accurately?
Well, accuracy in news reporting should always come first, even if you have to wait several hours to get the actual story.
Okay, you're going to be out of business pretty soon if you're the last dog to the fight every single time.
Well, then I think those that are misrepresenting or getting wrong information should be punished for that, and that'll slow that down.
Okay.
I would think.
So you think somebody should have a system of punishments
Definitely.
if they mess up a story?
Because, I mean, if something false is going to say there's a terrorist attack or something, if there's a bunch of false information going around and that's causing people to react certain ways, that's not a good thing. So there should be punishment for trying to rush the story too fast before the information actually gets there and falsifying over half of it.
What about plagiarism, guys? Plagiarism, what about it?
It's illegal.
Absolutely, it's illegal. Does it happen?
Yes.
Absolutely. In fact, lots and lots of these memoir books now that are coming out by people, politicians, they're finding big chunks of them have basically been pulled from the internet. where they, quote, borrowed somebody else's writings. Well, that's not borrowing. That's just flat out stealing. Two new things that are facing kind of our society. You've got new things called advertorials, which are ads that bear striking resemblance to an editorial content, and the infamous infomercials, which are literally 30-minute television shows that are meant to do nothing but sell. One of the things, we deal in magazine publishing here at the office. One of the things that I've noticed with a lot of the secular magazines is they're getting a lot more covert about some of their ads, to where they're having to put up in the corners, this is an advertisement, because the people who are laying out the ads basically make it look like it flows with the magazine. Either looks like an article that is supporting something, or that it's an endorsement or something, and so you actually have to look up at the top or the bottom, and it'll say, ad page or advertisement. All right, let's do a little question here. Is it ethical to post a rumor about another student on a campus gossip site?
No.
What do you think our government has said?
Sure.
All right, let's look at some background on this one. Use of campus gossip site where students can post. These are growing. I'm sure you guys have at least heard of them. They were originally set up to promote free speech, to allow people to communicate with each other. And the big draw of some of these was each dorm would have its own room, so to speak. So like let's say you lived in the handover dorm at Vanderbilt campus. Well, there was basically a site you could go to where people in that dorm could communicate, and it turned into more than just regular, hey, we're going to have this party, or hey, we're going to get a study group together. It started turning into more of a rumor-based.
Is that what Facebook was? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how Facebook started. Some of the comments meant to be harmless. Others, particularly comments about fellow students, can be vicious, harmful, and often are just bold-faced lies. School administrators state that they cannot regulate the content since the site are not sponsored or run by the college, although they hope that students will avoid them. So, we run this to the law system. Federal law prohibits web hosts from being liable for the content posted by users. What does that mean?
Can't be sued.
Off the hook. They can do whatever they
Okay,
want.
so if I'm running a website called Juicy Campus, pretty much you can put anything you want to on there, and I don't have to worry a bit. Add to that, a California court recently ruled that anonymous posts on the internet are protected under the First Amendment, even if they are unquestionably offensive and demeaning. This was based on verbal attacks against company executives on Yahoo message board. It is also very difficult to get a court order for the IP addresses of corresponding online posts. In other words, it takes a whole lot for them to be able to come back after somebody. These are even posts that are calling for individuals to be physically assaulted. Give you an example of that. 2 female law students at Yale couldn't get a court order for IP addresses corresponding to online posts calling for those 2 girls to be raped and beaten. The law said First Amendment overrides your safety.
If that was the president,
Yeah.
they'd jump on that
Like white on rice?
You would think so.
Isn't like
For somebody that I know is homosexuality before.
yeah.
The juicycampus.com actually went offline February of 2009, but it was then replaced by several other different ones. And guys, let's be honest, that's how these particular companies work. If Juicy Campus gets to be a kind of a lightning rod for controversy, all they got to do is change their web address. And so now we're not Juicy Campus, we're collegeabc.com. The College Anonymous Confession Board.com. Now, Is there ever a point where content on a gossip site should be censored?
When it's slanderous.
Okay, I heard a yes and I heard a when it slanders.
Are you talking about legally now?
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's libelous.
Okay, so if it is something that can cause someone liable slander, you're saying yes. What about this? Should web hosts have a legal or ethical responsibility for content posted on their site?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are willing to, now think about that for just a minute. Before you say yes,
We already are.
let's say that you have a church website that has a forum or a blog or whatever, and somebody in New Zealand puts a really raunchy thing on that. Because it's your church's website, you saying your church ought to be legally responsible?
Well, you're going to have to do the explaining for it.
I would put a login information.
You can't just ignore it and say, well, I didn't do it, so
Well,
you're still liable for or you're still responsible for the potential damage they could do to your reputation, whether deserved or not.
Okay? What if the posting leads to a criminal act? Should the web host be responsible for that?
Hey, Brad,
Yeah.
would it depend on the purpose of the website, though? Somewhat?
Okay?
Like what they're
What do you...
trying to prove?
If you've got a college anonymous confession board website that basically is allowing college students to write or say anything they want to, should that website be held responsible? If somebody goes on there and says, for instance, Joe Schmo is a Ku Klux Klan worshiping racist, somebody should take him behind the bushes and kill him. And 3 days later, he ends up behind the bushes dead. Ethically speaking, what should happen?
I think the person who said it should go to jail.
Person who said it. What about the person who did it, first off?
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
But
What about the web host that is allowing a forum for people to vent?
he has a responsibility to report such action.
But guys, understand, you are getting you're kind of walking a fine line with freedom of speech and censorship. Who gets to determine what gets reported and what doesn't get reported?
The web host.
Well, the thing about a web host is there are people who are smart enough to hack in and to take over someone else's website. So then the person
Right.
who seems to be the web host isn't actually the web host.
Yeah, so then you got a whole nother issue. If you've been hacked and somebody else is doing your basic administrative deal. Emily, how would you feel if you read a posting about yourself on a gossip site?
What does it say?
Uh-oh.
Let's say that it's just not very flowering. How about that?
Probably not very good.
Okay, would that cause you to want to completely remove these? Or are we big enough to kind of step back and say, you know what, freedom of speech, we live in a democratic society that is based on the ability for somebody to say what they want, I'm going to just let it slide.
If it was not true, I'd probably want it taken off.
Okay? So, do we see this particular site as a good form of media? No. All right. What are the functions of media for society? Number one, the dissemination of information. Number two, interpretation of information. This is where we start getting a little tricky. Who gets to decide what they report?
The separate companies.
Okay? So, for instance, CBS decides what's going to be on CBS that night. And ultimately, also, the news anchor themselves has some say. You know, you look at a Dan Rather, Katie Couric, Tom Brokaw, Brian Williams kind of people. They have some leeway as to what stories that they want to promote during their 30-minute news segment. How could that lead or mislead the United States of America?
Well, if they pick, like they do now, certain groups to focus all the information on, all the news on, then it makes it seem like that's more of an issue in the country than it might actually be.
Okay? Give me an example of a hot topic that they have focused a lot on.
Homosexuality.
Okay? Homosexuals, do they receive a more airtime or less airtime when you compare the population, how many homosexuals there are versus how much airtime they get?
Like triple the amount.
Okay? What about something like global warming? Or what about something like, right now we got flooding in the Northeast? Guys, has it ever occurred to you that maybe some of those news, now I'm not saying that the flooding is not bad, but has it ever occurred to you that some of those news agencies are counting on ratings? And in order to sell ratings, it's got to be a more dramatic news story. So we're going to take our cameras to the worst possible place ever and show footage of the worst flooding possible. The one that I love, I don't know if you guys ever watch the Weather Channel, but anytime there's a storm, you can bank on them finding the flimsiest road sign that is blowing in the wind, and they're going to have a guy stationed right in front of that blowing wind, that sign, so that it's sitting there flapping behind him the whole time, and he's coming across like this is an F5 tornado, even though basically in reality it's just a rainstorm. But it sells. It basically, it gets the audience there.
It's the emotions.
One of the other functions of media would be for the transmission of persuasive messages. Last, production and marketing of mass entertainment. There's a lot to be said about how media is moving towards, and I'm not talking about regular shows, I'm talking about news media is even moving towards entertainment. Some of the shows we talked about, like a 2020 or Dateline or 60 Minutes, those are moving away from journalistic news and into the area of entertainment.
Hey, Brad?
Yes, sir.
Is there still Channel 5 Plus in the Nashville area?
There is, yes.
So you have two different channels still reporting news. They're essentially the same people, but they're just doing two different things and trying to monopoly, really.
Yeah,
Brett,
absolutely.
Brett, isn't it also true that the media also reports what the people want to hear? The prime example of this would probably be the war in Iraq. I mean, you hear from the media that this war was wrong. Then you talk to the soldiers that were there. They say we have to be there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the media's going to report. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, let's think about that for just a minute. Would the video footage that comes out of Iraq taint our minds as to what type of war is going on over there? If they show our soldiers picking up and caring for young children versus a bunch of dead citizens on the street that have been suicide bombed, there's two different images there. Or if they show our soldiers in a very aggressive stance, holding a gun above somebody that looks like they might be an innocent person, that's going to plant seeds in our head as to how we view that particular war. And I think in many cases they have spun the war the way they want us to see it. We're not really seeing the full picture. Other thoughts, comments on it? I asked the question, what happens to media and advertising as society moves further away from God? Why is this all a big deal, guys? I mean, we know, we've already talked in this class some, that our moral compass is gone. Be thinking as you caffeine up, what happens to media and advertising when our society moves away? Because I think we're seeing that, and I think that's causing some things happening today that would have never happened in years past. We'll pick up right there.
They become Vanderbilt.